Hello and welcome to the Swan Song Project Podcast. My name is Ben Buddy Slack and I'm the founder of the Swan Song Project. We're a charity that helps people faithfully under their lives to write and record their own original songs. If you'd like to find out more about the charity and how you might support us, you can do so on our website, which is swansongproject.co.uk, and you can also check us out on the various social media platforms, and the links for them will be in the description to this episode. This podcast features a range of songwriters and I talk to them about music and bereavement. We talk about one of their songs, how they wrote that. They share with us a songwriting tip that might be useful for new songwriters, and they also share with us a song that's meaningful to them in some way related to bereavement. This episode features Hugh Nankivell. I hope you enjoy it. Okay, today I'm here with Hugh Nankivell. Thanks for joining me, Hugh.
You're welcome. Nice to be with you, Ben.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to our conversation. So Hugh he's a musician and songwriter and community artist. So I met Hugh, I don't know how many years ago it was now. I was in a workshop that you were running in Leeds, that Chapel FM, it might have been East Leeds FM at the time, was running. And it was my first introduction to community music. So in some ways, Hugh is responsible for all of the work that I've done since then and the start of the Swan Song Project, because I didn't even know what community music was, and then I was invited to go on this workshop, and Hugh led it, and it kind of led me into doing songwriting workshops with people. That's then developed into the Swan Song Project. So thank you for being the spark that started that, Hugh.
You're welcome. Nice to have met you. Yeah, I remember it was in the chapel quite soon after they got the chapel, wasn't it? I think
that was the second one, because I think I've been in two of your workshops. The first one was at Leeds College of Music.
Right. Oh yeah. I remember.
Yeah. Then we did another one at the chapel a few years after that. Yeah. So yeah, going back a bit.
It's interesting, the word community musician, which, and I have been what is often called a community musician for all my life, I would say, really. And I was one of the people who set up the Sound Sense, the National Community Music Association, when we realised, lots of people all over the country, sort of 30 years ago, were doing the same sort of thing or similar things. It's just like, well, we should have a kind of body to talk about it. And then there's always the question of, what's community and what's music. It always comes up every few years. And sometimes I think I'm a social musician. I think in some ways is a kind of perhaps a more useful word. Sometimes I use that, and then sometimes I think I'm a municipal musician. Another quite interesting kind of phrase to kind of describe what it is that I do. But I suppose essentially what being a social community musician means is that you're making music with other people. You're inspiring, or you're learning from a kind of the community in which you are. So yeah,
because it was something like I never knew about it as an option as a musician, of that being a kind of job that you could do, and there being opportunities for work in those kind of areas. And I think it's something that a lot of musicians could benefit a lot from, having these kind of projects to be involved with. And I remember thinking at the time with that workshop, because it was very much a workshop for people who were getting into community music, about how you deliver these workshops, wasn't it? And that kind of training would be great to have more available for people. Like I say, for me, it was just kind of lucky that I knew the crowd at East Leeds FM who put me onto it, and then started this whole different section of my work, really.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Before we get into the usual structure of the podcast, I'm going to ask you just to say a little bit about a particular project that he's been involved with, which is quite similar to Swan Song in lots of ways, that you just told me a little bit about before the project. So you just wanted to say a little bit more about that, Hugh.
It's not a specific project, Ben, but it's just that I've been doing over the last 5 years a lot of work with people with dementia and in care homes, quite a lot. Some of that work is with intergenerational groups, so bringing preschool kids in, whether that's with childminders or whether it's after school that they kind of come in, with their parents. So there's been a range of those different kinds of projects, and one of the things that I've been really enjoying doing as part of that is when someone dies in a care home, it's like, if the care home is up for it, and there are 3 where they definitely are, we write a song with the rest of the group about that person. So it's a kind of, a posthumous memory of that person, and it's been really, really lovely to be able to do that, you know. So like when I'm writing a song with any group, it's, you know, the provocation for that one is, oh, what do we remember about John? You know, what are the things that we liked about John? How could we kind of memorialize him in song? And because I think that, you know, I'm really impressed that you're doing, you know, your project, because death is such a difficult issue for so many people to be able to, you know, to discuss. And I have one very good colleague who runs she's the outreach person for a care home. She's the events coordinator and the outreach person. And so when someone there has died, I will have a chat with her about, you know, how we should approach that songwriting, you know. And she said, well, maybe we don't do it this week. Maybe we just leave it till you're in next month, because it might be still a bit raw. Or actually, if there's someone in the room, I think it might be too upsetting, you know. But if they're not there today, then let's do it. You know, let's see how much we remember Rita and what is it that we remember about her. So I've really enjoyed that element. And then it becomes a celebration. You know, they're never a sad song. They're always about, you know, and sometimes if it's someone with dementia, it's about the fact that they used to forget things, or that they used to roar like a dog, you know. They're kind of really nice little kind of moments that you're able to kind of celebrate with them. So, yeah, and I think one of the other things I was just sort of saying to you is that, you know, again, if you're on an intergenerational project, it's kind of great because it means we're able to talk about death with young kids and people in a way that, you know, just doesn't really happen in normal life. You know, it's one of the very, very few things we know is going to happen to us, and yet we don't talk about it. Of course, you know this all the time because that's what your work is. But, you know, to be able to, for a 3-year-old to see her childminder crying, and to be able to say why, and then they say, well, Dot's not here this week, and they say why? Well, Dot died, you know. And it's like, so to be able to kind of have that conversation about it, because of course care homes are, you know, one element of them, just like hospices at one level, is where people go to die. It's very rare that you go into a care home and then come out again. Some people do, of course, but, you know, old people's care homes. So that's been a really, I've felt like a quite important element of my work. And actually one of the sad things about COVID-19 has been that there's a care home. In fact, the nearest care home to my house, Ben, is a very lovely one, and 4 people died in the same week of COVID-19, including 3 who I knew really well, and a brother and sister, aged 100 and 97, died on the same day. And of course, I've not been able to go back in. I've done one gig outside the care home since, singing through the windows, but I've not been able to go in, and that's felt, you know, one of the things about COVID-19. I've known quite a few people who have died of COVID, you know. So my friend Graham, who, you know, his mum and another friend's mum both died of it. And the thing about it is that lack of being able to grieve socially, you know. And it's that thing, isn't it, about when somebody dies, that you get together with friends and you sing some songs and you have a party, you have a wake, don't you? You know, that's the whole thing about it. And so people not to be able to do that. And I've really felt it with Arthur and Avis, the brother and sister I was just saying. You know, I've not been able to go back there because I have a monthly group. That band is called the Musical Cavaliers. They're a great group, and we meet once a month. And I've not been able to go back and say, you know, let's celebrate Arthur and Avis and write a song for them. So that has felt, you know, it's been very difficult, that element of not being able to grieve. Yeah,
definitely. I think it's the like rituals and processes for dealing with these things are so important, and particularly when you get a really positive one, like doing the creative outlet. And I sort of think we'll be talking about children. So we've done some work with Swan Song with children who are, you know, losing parents and grandparents in the hospices, and it always seems like such a nice thing for them to, at this time of difficulty, to then be doing something. And I always think of it like, hopefully it's inspiring a skill in them, that something that they might not have known they had, but now's the time you've realized you can take something difficult and make something nice out of it and enjoy this process. But yeah, the important, and like the feeling of some kind of closure, you know, that's what funerals say a lot, isn't it? Is that it gives the element of closure that some people won't be able to have now, of those usual rituals for dealing with loss.
Yeah, because it feels like you do need to have it within a certain time frame. You know, I think that, you know, sometimes people say, you know, when, you know, in terrible tragedies and they never find bodies or they don't find them for years, that lack of being able to, you know, celebrate it has felt a real kind of wound. And I've never really understood that because I've not had it as a kind of experience for me, whereas I definitely do on this occasion. You kind of think, yeah, I've not been able to go and say goodbye to Arthur. You know, I've not been able to do that. And even that, you know, he wasn't a close friend. I've known him for 2 years and he was 98 when I first met him. But I do feel I have a kind of, you know, he became, in fact, Ben, he became the conductor of our group. It was great. He discovered conducting at the age of 98, and on his 100th birthday we gave him a conducting baton, and it was really fantastic, you know, and we got him on telly to do some conducting, which just felt really great. So I do feel I kind of, you know, I was invested. Sounds far too technical. I felt I was involved in the end of his life, in that sense of kind of, you know, giving him something that he wasn't getting otherwise, you know, which is what music again can really offer.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about those losses, Hugh, and I hope there's, you know, a time comes soon where you can find a way with some of the people there to do something to mark them.
Yeah,
and yeah, it sounds like a great project. I really like the intergenerational aspect of it. I was just going to ask you before we move on to the usual structure of how do you find those sessions compared to your other songwriting workshops in general? Do you find them different in any way? Do you facilitate them in the same way? Or obviously you mentioned sometimes there's a more emotional element to them, but it's
with intergenerational groups or with just in care homes?
With that, the writing the songs in memory of someone who's just passed.
Yeah, I mean, I find I would say they're exactly the same as normal. You know, you have a whiteboard and you just come up with ideas. You know, you say, you know, John died last week. What do you remember about John? Let's make a song especially for him that we can celebrate. And then people come up with ideas. And, you know, again, if you're in care homes or if you're in intergenerational groups, some lines are going to be emotionally resonant, some are going to be silly, some are going to be funny, some are going to be non sequiturs, because you've got people there with dementia, you know, quite often. And so you usually it's about accepting everything in that space. So yeah, I don't necessarily find them any different.
Good stuff. Yeah. Brilliant. Cool. Well, let's move into the usual structure of the podcast then. So people who've seen these podcasts before know we do them this 3 sections. So we're going to have one of Hugh's songs in a moment, and then we'll have a little bit of a chat about how you wrote that. Then Hugh's going to share with us a songwriting tip, and then we're going to talk about a song that's meaningful to Hugh in some way related to bereavement at the end. So I'll ask Hugh to introduce your song for us, please, and then we'll have a bit of a chat about it afterwards.
Yeah, it's always very difficult being asked to present a song, you know. What song encapsulates exactly what you are about? And actually often it's just a recent one is by far the most useful, I think. So I've chosen a song that I wrote since lockdown, quite early on actually, which is called A Musical Hug. And this is a song that I wrote because one of the care homes where I work, we do a very lovely project. This is one's called the Biscuit Band, where we meet in the care home, but some other older isolated people come and they get a lift there, or they get a minibus that picks them up and they get brought from locally. And then we have like an hour together, and then we have tea and cake and biscuits, and then kids and families come for another hour after school. So it's a very kind of, long afternoon, but it's always really, really lovely. So I got to know these kind of socially isolated people quite well, and they're mostly older ladies, and they mostly, you know, live on their own, and they mostly have to have some kind of care. I'm always kind of amazed that they're still able to live on their own, you know, because they're kind of quite disabled. So there were kind of a group of women, and Gladys is one in this group, and there's another one called Mary, another one called Rita, another one called Anne. And then I was also thinking about quite a few relatives that I've got. So a sister Bridget, who and a cousin Mary, and another really nice friend, a visual artist who she's struggled with mental health all her life, and she's been in my choir, and she's a very lovely woman, and she's called Hazel. And I was really thinking about all these people who are on their own, and, you know, might, you know, for very good reasons need to be, you know, shielding and not see anyone else. And thinking about that thing, you know, I call it the musical hug, because that physical thing about, you know, being able to physically touch people, there's a Japanese word called skinship. I don't know if you've ever come across this, which is a really fantastic word. When I first heard it, it's clearly an English word, skinship. It's like kinship, and it's like skin. And I went to a primary school once, and they said these kids need skinship. And I thought, well, and they kind of assumed I would know what it means, which of course I do, but I'd not heard it before. It is a fantastic word, and the teacher, no, the classroom assistant in this class, he just rolled around the class with these kids. They were in year 1 or reception, so they're very young. But that's what the school was saying, was that they need that physical contact. And I'm really aware when, in care homes and especially with early years as well, what people want is to have their hands held, to be hugged, and so I was thinking, hey, we can't do a physical hug at the moment, so can we make a musical hug? So it's a very simple song in the sense that it doesn't have a chorus, it doesn't have a bridge, it doesn't have a middle eight, it's just repeated verses that go round and round. So it has Mary first, and then it has Gladys, and then Hazel, and then Bridget are the kind of 4 people that I've all happen to be women with 2 syllables, and someone sort of accused me as I sang it online once, saying, what about men? What about people with 1 syllable? What about 4 syllables? And so I've sung it. I have sung it a few times in some Facebook live gigs where I've added other people's names. And I was really glad that my son Laurie, who plays cornet, I just it felt like it kind of needed something else. So kind of early on in lockdown, and he's a touring musician, plays full-time in a band, and their whole tour had been cancelled, so I knew he was at home, and so it was really lovely that he was able to play a cornet. And so the cornet, which comes after the 3rd verse, is that little instrumental break. The music is the same, it's just the same sequence again, but there's the kind of breathing break. And I'd like to think that at that point perhaps people could think of their own verse. So that was when I did the original recording, but the version that I did for you is just me at the piano singing the verses around.
Great stuff. So we'll have that now, and then I'll put in the link for the description where people can hear the version with the cornet as well. That's really nice.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Here's my musical hug by Hugh Nankivell.
The musical hug. Mary lives on her own. Mary lives all alone. But Mary, we're thinking of you, and we send you our love. Yes, it's true, even though we can't come round and give you a hug.
Okay, brilliant. So that was Musical Hug by Hugh Nankivell. Yeah, it's a lovely little song, Hugh, and I feel like it's a great song in terms of, like as you're saying, people could easily adapt it to their own, to personalize it more. And yeah, it just feels like it could be a very multi-purpose song for lots of different people.
Yeah.
And did you have in mind when you were writing it? Did you have a clear were you thinking of things like that? You wanting it to be that it could be used for other people, and did you want to like, what were you thinking in terms of the musicality of it before? Did you have a plan of like wanting to keep it fairly simple and things like that, or did it just develop naturally?
It's a very good question. I don't think I do think those things beforehand. I just think I need to make a little song here. Let's see where it goes. And I'm always intrigued as to why some songs do last and others don't, you know, because I make songs all the time, and especially kind of instant songs with people, and you think, well, why is that one stuck? I met a kid the other day on the park run just before Christmas. I say a kid, she's about 12, and I'd written a song with her when she was 4 in reception class, an alphabet song, because the class teacher said, you know, there's no alphabet songs. All the alphabet songs, they're just terrible. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. She just says, horrible. Why can't we have so much? So we wrote some whole alphabet songs. And this girl's been singing it for the last, 8 years or something. And her dad says, oh yeah, she sings it all the time. And it was just like, I was thinking, how, you have no idea that one is going to stick. And yet it does. And I knew with this one, it was quite interesting with the musical hug that, because I shared it on SoundCloud and Facebook or something, and lots of people started listening to it and sharing it with each other. And, so sometimes you realize that something you've made has some kind of resonance. And I suppose it is quite simple. A lot of my songs are more harmonically or rhythmically quirky than this one. I mean, this one has major ninths and sevenths and sixths in it, but it's kind of essentially fairly straightforward as a song. So maybe there is something in that people feel comforted by. We're comforted by things that are in 4 and 3 because we're used to it. And when things are kind of out of that or have, harmonic dissonances, people kind of feel it takes a bit more time to get into.
Yeah, it feels like, it's a comfortable tune that you feel people would pick up easily. And it's, it's think, like in the group workshops, having those songs that, easy for people to grasp the structure of and then join in with and build up. So it feels like something what people can listen to it and then sing it around the house with their own people and sing it to each other.
Yeah, and when I've done it live on Facebook, a few gigs, so I've obviously, with live Facebook gigs, you're getting some notes on the chat. You're relying on that as to respond. But of course, I've no idea whether people are listening who I don't know, whether they're on their own or not. And it's been really nice, as someone has said. So I've got a friend actually in Huddersfield called Liz, who's listened to all my gigs. And I hadn't, for some reason, because she's got kids, they've left home, I didn't think, oh yeah, she's someone who's been, on her own in that time, which and so when she said, I sang a version, I put Liz into it. Of course I did, because she'd sort of said, I'm on my own, Hugh. And I have become very conscious that people who are on their own, it's a very different life. The fact that I've been in a house with 2 other people who I can, physically hold and hug and touch, there is that, and talk to in a very different way from talking online. Yeah,
they're interesting, the live gigs. I remember finding at the start of lockdown when the first started happening, I think it was Mick Artistic was the first one that I watched. And I remember just feeling like how nice it felt to be watching something that was live and knowing that other people were watching it. Some of my friends were watching it as well. And like, I didn't kind of think that would be as big a thing as it was to watch. Just, we were all watching different TV shows, different times, stuff like that, but watching something where other people are sat watching it as well, enjoying the same thing and seeing the live reactions and powerful thing.
Yeah.
Another question I was going to ask you, which is kind of something what I think is particularly personal for me in terms of my development as a musician and as a community musician as well, is do you find anything in terms of how you, I can't think the best way of phrasing this, but like, I guess it's maintaining your own artistic voice and like way of creating your own songs whilst still doing your community work? And do you feel any kind of mixture between like doing the group where you're working with so many different people in different ways and then maintaining the Hugh Nankivell way of doing things and your own artistic, does that make sense in a way of like, it's something I just kind of feel like with myself sometimes when I'm doing lots of songs with different people, then it's remembering the way I want to write my own songs in a separate way.
Yeah, I think I used to worry about that more, Ben, than I do now. don't worry about it in the sense that I'm aware that when I'm making a song, you never know what's going to happen with it, and sometimes if I'm on my own. So, for instance, just before I just started to write a song this morning, and I've no idea where it's going to go, but I'm aware that if I'm writing it just for me, that I'm the person responsible for the emotional content of what it is that's there. And so when I share it, it may be that emotional content is only really of relevance to me. Or it might be that sometimes it's clear that it has an emotional relevance for other people as well. But it's only my kind of responsibility. So I might put it online and then nobody might listen to it, and that's kind of fine. When I'm working with other people, my kind of job is slightly different in the sense that what I'm doing is I'm kind of shepherding stuff, or I'm kind of arranging the ideas that people kind of present. And I suppose I feel more of a sense of responsibility for them feeling that they've been empowered, or they've got some kind of agency, or they've got some kind of had some involvement in it, which is different, because if it's just me, it doesn't doesn't matter to anyone else. Whereas when I'm in a room with 10 or 20 other people, I'm kind of conscious of all their input. So I suppose at one level it's no different, and on one level it's quite different. I'm not sure I've explained that at all, actually.
Yeah, I think I'm following you. Yeah, it's something I didn't anticipate, but that's something I think when I was, and I guess the other element of it is, do you ever feel creatively tired when you're doing a lot of, what I kind of wondered at times of when I'm doing a lot of workshops and a lot of sessions with other people, then having the energy to do my own creative stuff can be tricky, and it's something I think I'm still trying to find a balance with. You experience that, Al?
I definitely experience being tired through working, in that sense of, whether you're, what kind of output you're, the output and the input, the balance of those is really important. And I know that for me, I need to make music on my own, and if I haven't sat at the piano or worked on something a little bit for myself each day, then I sometimes feel, oh, that's what I've not done yet. It's 10 o'clock at night, I haven't actually played the piano. I need to go and do that for myself to kind of regenerate myself. But I find the thing about knowing how much energy you're going to give, it's really, really hard. And I think that, that I must, the feedback you get when you're working with people is really important. So actually a good example is that I've just finished, or just before lockdown, a year in the 2 dementia wards in Exeter Hospital. And that's been really, really interesting. And they're so varied, those sessions, because I'll arrive and I'll just say to the sister, is there a bay you'd like me to go in? The bays have 6 beds in, or are there any individual rooms you'd like me to go in? And sometimes the whole session is just filled with joy. And that, there's kind of, you're singing old songs and making songs up, and I'm aware that I'm working with the patients and the families and the staff equally. I'm kind of aware there are 3 different kind of groups there. And sometimes you just come away feeling kind of very energized, and you've had a really great time. And other times you go and it's just hard work. It's just really hard because people are very distressed and people are very clear that they don't want you there. And oh God, someone's making music again. Oh my God, they say that out loud, or they swear quite often. It's quite easy to be put off by that thing, and you kind of to feel. So yeah, I think that I definitely, it's definitely kind of symbiotic, that you're picking up on energy in spaces, as well as kind of giving out a lot of energy. And so sometimes when I get back, I'm surprised how tired I am, and sometimes I'm surprised that I'm not more tired. You know, I might come back from doing a kind of long day, but actually the energy has been so good that it's felt fine.
Yeah, I think that's the same. I find the same thing with my own writing as well. If you're like, sometimes you'll have a session where you're writing something and you feel great and you come away really buzzing about it, and sometimes it feels much more like harder work. It's just, I guess it's a consistency with the creative process, isn't it? Sometimes it's firing, sometimes it's not. Yeah, cool. So let's move into the next part now. So this is where I ask my guests to share a songwriting tip that might be useful for new or aspiring songwriters. So what would your tip for us, Vicky?
I've got two tips for you, if that's all right, Ben. One is you say yes to every idea.
Okay.
For me, this is a really important thing in terms of being a kind of collective or community songwriter. You know, that if I go into a room and you know, we might sing a hello song or play a little musical game or sing a couple of songs they know, and then we'll decide we're going to write a song today. And you know, it may be that the care manager or the school teacher or whoever it is has said, you know, we're doing a project about this, could we do a song about that? Or it might be, let's just say, you know, what should we write a song about today? And someone will say something and you say yes. And then you say, what's the first line going to be? And someone will say something and you say yes. And you write down everything that people say. You know, obviously, if it's all swear words or if it's, you know, abusive in some way, you don't. But the saying yes, because then things happen and it's like you're opening a door, and as soon as you say no, you have to then kind of find another way around, and it's slower and it's more convoluted and you lose the focus of people. So for me, that kind of first rule of just saying yes to stuff and then seeing how quickly you can then make that into a song is really important. Of course, saying yes to every idea means that your song is possibly not going to have a very coherent or unified or a kind of shared emotion, because it's going to be this kind of diverse set of things. But you can talk about that and explain that, and you can say, yeah, and so next time I come in, I'm just going to work with Ben for 10 minutes and we're going to write a little song, just me and Ben, and that will have a kind of emotional content. Or so saying yes is the first thing. And then my second one, if I'm allowed to say two, one is just that every song that you're going to make is going to sound like another song somewhere in the world. And so I often kind of start by, when I'm writing songs with groups, and I say, look, you know, the fact is that you're going to make a song that somewhere else in the world it's going to sound a bit like. It's going to have the same vocal phrase, possibly. It's going to have the same chords, almost certainly. It's going to have the same melody. It's going to have probably some of the same words in. But what you mustn't do is mention that song. So as soon as someone says, oh, they think in their head, oh, this sounds like ABBA song. This sounds like John Lee Hooker song. This sounds like something else. As soon as you say that, it's kind of destroyed, because then the rest of the group, all they can hear is that other song. So you just acknowledge that every song is going to sound like another song, and that's where the idea will probably have come from. You know, that everything is a kind of composite learning from other things, but you don't mention it.
Yeah.
So that's two little tips.
Yeah, that's really good, Hugh. I think you're right with the second part as well. I think you'd be surprised how little people get those. You know, it might seem like, I've done a lot of time where I've written a song which to me has been very heavily inspired by another song. But then you play it for someone else, and most of the time, unless you make it really obvious, a lot of the time, even if it's, there's a lot of similarities, people don't spot them as often as I used to worry they would. And the same like learning other people's songs, you know, like you'd learn a Bob Dylan song, and then you'd learn a John Lee Hooker song or something like that, and be very surprised finding out that they're actually quite similar structurally. They just sound so different the way different artists do them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I think that's really good. I was just going to ask you as well about the saying yes stuff. Does that apply with your own stuff as much, or is that more a group technique?
It's a very good question. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before. I think I say, so I quite often, when I just sit at the piano, I play something, and usually I'll play something that I quite like, if that makes sense. And so I'll record it, and then I'll usually write down some words, and I'll initially think, oh, there's quite a bit like, the same thing about in a group session, someone will say something, and and you write it down, or someone will say, you know, or they might play these two chords and you think, well, those two chords work really well. And I suppose for me, the difference is that I then go back to stuff. So, you know, I was saying before that if I get to the end of the day and I haven't played, I'll quite often sit down at night and I'll play, and I might jot a few things down, and then I'll think, okay, I'll leave that till tomorrow or the day after, and then I'll come back to it and see if it's any good. And sometimes, so I sort of say yes to stuff, but then later on, when I'm kind of in that editing process, I'll then change it or reject it or edit it.
Yeah.
So that is that difference, is that, you know, when you're there in a room and you've got half an hour and you're going to make a song, you don't have that time to kind of reflect on it or edit it. If you're kind of working quickly to kind of make something with the spirit of what you've got in that room. I mean, I've learned that as a lesson as well. I did, am I allowed a little diversion here?
Yeah.
I had a very wonderful 3 years working in a special school, quite near you actually, Ben, Lydgate Special School in just outside Holmfirth. Right. And it was a fantastic residency. I just had an afternoon a week for 3 years. And I'd been writing a lot of collective songs with a kind of group of teenagers for a while. And then at one point, this one lad, Andrew, I've never forgotten this, and it was about 20 years ago, and he said to me, Hugh, when are we going to write a real song? And it was such a brilliant question. And we unpacked it, and he meant two things. He meant, when are we going to write a song that sounds like Robbie Williams, who was his favourite, you know, with the kind of production values, instead of me playing the guitar or the accordion and them playing crap percussion out of time. For me, more important, he meant, when are we going to write a song that means something to me? And what was brilliant about that was I was then able to go to the head teacher, Bill Gola, and say, Bill, could I do some one-to-one sessions with Andrew? And then we started, and he wrote some extraordinary things about, you know, how his mum wouldn't use the hoist because it took too long to get him out of bed, and so she was doing her back in, or how the bus driver drove too fast to school and it really hurt him, or the fact that he was a season ticket holder at Huddersfield Town, but he couldn't ever swear with his mates because he was always in the family enclosure. So these things, like, you know, we were able to have one-to-one sessions and write some stuff that was really emotional and kind of quite powerful. We never really cracked the sounding like Robbie Williams element, but we did definitely do that other half, which had made me realise, yeah, if you worked one-to-one with someone, you can really kind of find what it is, because there's a limit to where you can go writing group songs, and he clearly got to that limit after we'd done probably 2 or 3, and he waited a few more weeks before he kind of got to the end of his tether.
Yeah, I think that's a really important lesson, and kind of being aware of the pros and cons of a group, and for me it was realizing that, and then being able to articulate to people. So if you get questions like that, and because with a group as well, it can be hard balancing. Some people are like very lyrically focused. I want to spend a lot of time writing very kind of in-depth, meaningful lyrics. Other people are very melody focused. They want to just spend a lot of time with the tune, and it's very hard to balance that sometimes, isn't it? But I remember being clear about that. Of like, you know, we're writing a song as a group here. We've got a set amount of time, so we've got to accept these parameters, and we're going to do the best we can with that. If somebody really wants to write a Leonard Cohen-esque, you know, masterpiece, that's a different project. It's going to take a bit longer, and you might need some one-to-one time and things like that. And yeah, and same with you creating your own songs as well, of like whether I'm just going to put out a quick song now that I just feel like making up on the spot, or if I'm going to spend one that I'm going to come back to and edit over years and years again, as Leonard Cohen would. I just finished Leonard Cohen's biography, so he's very very hot in my mind, but spending those years coming back to songs, editing them over and over again. Yeah, great stuff. Cool, so let's move into the third section now. So this is where I ask my guests to share with us a song that's meaningful to them in some way relating to bereavement. And what I do here is I put the link for the song in the description, so if you're watching or listening to this and you want to go and check out the song, you can find it there, and listen to it and come back and hear us talk about it. So what song did you choose for us, Hugh?
I mean, again, there's quite a lot I kind of felt that I could have used, and my immediate thought went to the Forage Requiem, which for me is the kind of longest history back. I remember when I was a kid and I came home from school one day and I felt really ill. I think I was sick for a few days. And my dad put the Forage Requiem on the record player. I was just sat in the living room and he put it on. And I'd never heard it before, and I did think this was kind of quite extraordinarily magical music. And then I found out what it was all about, and I thought, oh God, I'm going to die. My dad's put it on because he knows I'm going to die. And that was a kind of, so I've had that, and that connection with that music, which I think is sublime music, the Forage Requiem, and particularly as opposed to other requiems. You know, I know Mozart's and Verdi's, but they've never done quite the same. And so there was that thing about, you know, having the connection with it, I think, from that early age. But the song I chose is Casimir Pulaski Day by Sufjan Stevens, which, it's off his Come On Feel the Illinois album. And it struck me from when I first heard it, because I've written songs most of my life, but I don't think I really became an interesting lyricist or a good lyricist until I was in my 30s. And I think it's because I didn't used to listen to the words. I could never listen to the words the first time through, which is why I think why Bob Dylan has kind of sort of passed me by most of my life, kind of rather sadly. Although, having said that, someone like Joni Mitchell I've always loved, but I suspect that it's because she was doing more interesting musical things, as a purely musical things, than Bob Dylan was. So it was kind of strange for me that I didn't, I remember experiencing, I remember when Skylarking by XTC came out, which I love that album, and I listened to it with a friend, and he talked to me at the end of the album about all the lyrics, and I just thought, I haven't listened to any words at all. How can he listen to a song for the first time and be gobsmacked by what Andy Partridge is singing about? I was really, really struck by that, and I kind of thought, oh yeah, I just don't listen to the words. And then I kind of learned, oh yeah, of course, it's about the relationship of words and music. And so when I got into Sufjan Stevens and I started to listen to that one, and I remember hearing that song for the very first time and thinking, oh yeah, he's telling a very, very clear story here. And I love the fact that in this particular song, it's about a friend, a girlfriend, who gets cancer and dies. And it's his experience. You kind of imagine him as a late teenager, I guess, and you imagine him as being very real. It's very interesting for me that I've no idea if it is a true story, and it doesn't matter, but you hear it absolutely as if he's telling you this story that really happened, and that it's over those few months of her being diagnosed and dying of cancer. And yet it's not at all morbid, it's not at all mournful in a way. I mean, some of the words kind of are, and he does what he does such a lot, which is just take 4 chords and go round and round with those 4 chords. And what I love about Sufjan Stevens with his 4 chords is he finds different ways of putting melodies together on it. So the verse melody has different from the trumpet melody when that comes in, and it's very real. You can see very clear images in it, and yet there are images that you question, like his father drove into the Navy Yard just to prove that he was sorry. It's like, it's a kind of extraordinary phrase. It doesn't, what earth does that mean? But there's a kind of backstory, and that there's someone who's driven. And I always think, for some reason, because I've lived in the Southwest, I can see the Navy Yard in Plymouth, quite near where I live. And I always see that, when I hear that line, someone driving into and you're just thinking, yeah, what is the backstory of that? And it doesn't particularly matter. And there are other words, like the beginning, he talks about the Forage Stone. And I didn't realise until I looked at the lyrics a lot later that it's 4 and then H, stone, he's referring to forage. And I always heard it as forage, like searching for stuff in the woods, and the Forage Stone. Oh yeah, and I love those things about when you hear a word that's slightly wrong. And in this case, it really doesn't matter, because I still don't know what 4H stone is. Is it like pH value? I have no idea. Or is it something? Whereas the Forage Stone is something he went and found. So and this is a song that my daughter has sung, and I performed it with her, and that's been a really lovely thing to do. So I have a kind of quite strong connection of her, taking that story and singing it, and then me kind of being in a backing group with her. And that's kind of, I've had quite strong emotional contact, because I don't play other people's music very much. I've done Sufjan Stevens Christmas songs, and I really enjoy, and that's been a fantastic little project. But other than that, not really performed very much. But I think I've learned quite a lot from Sufjan's songs, in particular the thing about, having the same set of chords going on throughout, but changing the melodies and the arranging accompaniment so that it sounds like it's very different. And then you come back and you think there's just 4 chords that go throughout. So I've kind of learned from it as well.
Yeah, it's a beautiful song, and I agree with all the stuff you said there. It paints a really good picture, very clear. I'd be interested to know if it is a true story or not. But it's, again, I know what you're saying about the origin of certain lyrics. Sometimes it's interesting to, and I used to be, so I'm the kind of opposite of you. Like when I first got to be, I'm very lyric heavy, and I'd always be very interested in studying all the words. And I think my need to understand them has definitely lessened a lot. I used to be like, I'd want to know exactly what a song was about and all the references in it. And I think it's probably through Tom Waits, who like generally gives different stories for what his song's about every time he's asked, and him being very clear about, I'm not, it might be about this, might be about this. It kind of doesn't really matter what I wrote it about. It's what it matters to you about. And it comes up a lot in Swan Song as well. People, like we're talking about something, we can't put that in because people want to know what it means. It's like, it doesn't matter if people know what it means. It matters if it means something to you, and I guess to the people who you're writing it for. If you're writing it just for your husband or wife, if they get it, that's all that matters.
I was talking last night with some friends about the new Bob Dylan album, and in fact, a cousin of mine who's a massive Bob Dylan fan, and he's always been surprised that I haven't, because I've known him all his life. He's a couple of years younger than me, and he was saying that this new album, it quotes from a lot of ancient Roman history, and it quotes from a lot of Shakespeare, and I didn't get those things. I don't know about that, and it's quite interesting, isn't it? For him, as a kind of who's heard every Bob Dylan album and invested a lot of his life in understanding it. For him, that's what that's what he's kind of enjoying about that. Whereas for me, it's just like, actually, I'm just enjoying the imagery without knowing what the references are.
Yeah, and I sometimes think about it like in songs. I like to have, you have different ways of enjoying different songs. Some songs you just enjoy, it's got a great groove, a great tune to it. Some it's it's like Murder Most Foul, the first single from that new Dylan album. It's like 17 minutes long or something like that, and that's a great journey if you really want to study all those references and the amazing way he crafts lyrics and things together. But it's not a dance floor hit, is it? It's not a big sing along either. But there's space for all these different songs, and different times of day. I feel enjoying different types of songs.
Yeah, I think the thing about Sufjan is interesting because he has made an album about the death of his mother, and that's very, it's called Carrie and Lowell, and it's about his relationship with his mum. And from what you read about what he said about it, and when you hear the lyrics, that is very emotionally heartfelt, and hearing that tour live was very extraordinary. Hearing those songs, him singing live, and it's a really interesting thing, isn't it, about whether that Casimir Pulaski Day, is it a true story or is it not? And it really doesn't matter if you believe it in the song, but there's something quite interesting as well, because actually you'd think that, I think if I tried to write a song like that, where I'm first person telling a story about something which isn't real, I think I'd find it quite difficult. I don't think I'd be able to pull it off, whereas I definitely think he can, because there's enough of him in how he presents it or something. I'm not quite sure, but I always do think, is this true, this story?
There's something, I think when Tom Waits did the Storytellers, was it VH1 Storytellers show, he said something like that. He was telling a story. Once he said, a lot of these songs I don't remember where they came from, but I'll make something up that might be better. And then he says, it's like when you go and see a really bad movie and someone leans in next to you and says, this is based on a true story. He says, does it really make it a better movie?
Yes.
Which I thought was really interesting. And the other thing that kind of made me think then is sometimes, even if the story's not true, the sentiment behind it is. So the specific lyrics of the song might be fictional, but what the artist is conveying in those stories is true, and that's what makes it effective.
Yeah, and I think and it always makes me think about the Paul McCartney thing about, he says that he doesn't know what a song is about until he's sung it to someone else and they've told him. And you kind of know that can't be really kind of true because he knows where they've come from. But at the same time, it's absolutely true because, if someone responds to that song in a way, or it triggers something, a memory or an emotion, and therefore it kind of releases something, then it's worked. And, so he has no control, as neither do you, neither do I. Once we've written a song and shared it with people, we've no control over what they're going to think about it or how they're going to respond to it. Yeah,
it's one of the beautiful things about it. One of the great kind of excitements when you do share a song with people of how people interpret and react to it.
Exactly.
Brilliant. Well, it's been really nice talking to you. We've gone way over time, so I apologise for taking up more of your time, but I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, likewise. It's always nice to share stuff about songs and music.
Yeah, definitely. Have you got anything coming up? Are you doing any more Facebook Live things or anything you want to mention?
I've got a bit burnt out that I decided to kind of take a bit of time off. I've quite enjoyed no Facebook, not reading the news for 2 weeks now, which I'm quite surprised. Nice. I'm kind of continuing it at the moment. I've been making a lot of songs, and I'm struggling with how to release them at the moment, as kind of we all are. It's just like, is there any point? Or, well, no, not is there any point, but what's the medium in which you'll kind of present stuff, because we don't have any vinyl, CD, cassette, online. It's just like, how do you present them? So I am making some quite interesting songs at the moment, and but I suppose in terms of a big project, I've just applied for some funding, which we'll find out quite soon, which is an intergenerational project. And actually, going back to the musical hug thing, it's actually a kind of research project of how close can we get to skinship without actually touching each other. So we're going to try, it's an intergenerational project, and if we get the money, one project will be writing letters, one will be telephoning, one will be Zoom, one will be outside the window, one will be, I can't remember, that's 4, there's 5 different ways, and actually we're going to try and see, which one does replicate the kind of, actually having a kind of physical hug closest. So I really hope that we get that one, and it's one of those things where it's quite short-term funding. We'll find out in a couple of weeks, and then we have to do it between August and December or something. So that's all I can think of at the moment. I'm sure there are other things.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, fingers crossed for you there, and I'll put your website in the description and tag your Natural Causes page so people can check out those links if they want to keep up to date with your upcoming stuff.
Yeah, great.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Hugh.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you. And thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'll be back with another episode soon.